And we're live. Hello and welcome to Spec Women Chat. Please forgive us. This is a very technical issue-laden episode, apparently, and we've had those before, so we're just going to run through, and hopefully it will work itself out. I'm Diane Morrison. I'm your host today, and I'm joined by a wonderful panel of amazing writers, and I will let them introduce themselves. We'll start with Robin.
Hi there, I'm Robin Bennis. I'm the author of The Guns Above and By Fire Above, which are action, political intrigue novels about a lady who shoots people.
I like it. I like it. A lady who shoots people. Excellent. That's cool. And then we have Laura.
My name is Laura Ann Gelman. I am the author of, most recently, the Devil's West trilogy. I like to say the multiply award-nominated, never yet award-winning author. Two-thirds of my series have all featured not only a strong female character, but multiple strong female characters. So,
thank you for joining us. By the way, I'm so glad you guys could both be here. Bonnie, we've had before.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm Bonnie Milani, author of the Homeworld series, which at this point is mostly novellas. All my characters, really, all my female leads are strong, occasionally psychotic, occasionally homicidal, and occasionally shooting up killers, along with some really seriously homicidal female arachnids. I've won the Evie Award for Homeworld, nominated in Reader's Choice and a number of other awards, and I am immensely flattered and honored to be included here.
Thanks so much for coming, Bonnie. That's great. We are also expecting Fran Wild to join us. She is having some technical issues today, so hopefully she'll be able to log back in. She did say she was coming back. Martha Wells was advertised as being here tonight, but that was apparently a misunderstanding and she is not able to make it. So we're just going to jump in and we're going to start. Everybody's bugaboo, strong female characters. Right? I don't really understand why this is a controversial topic, but apparently it is. To bring up, I guess, a sore spot, because, hey, why not talk about the elephant in the living room, right? This was one of the things that was listed as a complaint among the Sad Puppies Manifesto when they engineered their move on the Hugo Awards, something that they objected to. Let's start by discussing what to you defines a strong female character.
Yeah, I think, can I butt in here with the question, because I'm not sure what was the objection? I really, maybe I'm just dense, but I don't understand what the objection could be for the awards.
It was, oh God, that's an entire panel of itself, I think.
Yeah, it really is. I guess, but thank you for asking the question, actually, because I kind of assumed people were familiar and, hey, maybe not all of our audience is, right? So a couple of years ago, there was a group calling themselves the Sad Puppies, or various incarnations thereof, who made they were acting perfectly within the technical rules, as I understand it at the time, but they made an effort to take over the Hugo Awards. Right, because they objected to the fact that more diverse, more politically correct fiction was tending to sweep the awards as opposed to stuff that they viewed as more traditional work.
Well, I mean, it really, plowed under the classic American story of the ennui of a mediocre white guy, which is very sad. We need that now more than ever, and just these awful feminists have destroyed it.
Mm-hmm. I think there was also a lot of, and this has always been my problem when we talk about strong characters, in that the definition, the word strong, so many people define it so many different ways, and there's always this very traditional strong is masculine. And if you have a strong character, obviously they're aping masculine characteristics if they're female. And for traditionalists, this is very threatening. Because if a woman could take their role, what do they have left? And the thing I always approach with it, somebody's got static on the line. Bonnie, I think you need me to mute.
Let me get back in.
Yeah. But the idea that strong is only one thing, or it's gender related, is what I've always played with. I mean, are we strong emotionally? Are we strong physically? Are we strong politically? Are we strong financially? They're all valuable and valid interpretations.
I agree with that. Yeah, you're right. And that actually goes to the question, right? How do we define strong female characters?
Sorry, I'm still getting set. It's really hard for me to hear anything because the static that's...
yeah, let me test mine here.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Sorry, Robin.
Yeah, sorry, guys. Like I said, it is one of those nights where it appears to be that we're going to have technical problems. You know, I hope you bear with us, right? But yeah, strong. How do we define strong, right? Does it mean, you know, like as some have said, does it mean emulating masculine techniques or characteristics? Is there such a thing as masculine or feminine characteristics anyway, right? If there is, right, how do we define those, right? Like there's a lot to the question, and I really don't mind if each of you wants to wax rhetoric on it a while and examine the aspects of the issue. I'm totally cool with that.
You know, butting in here, I'm astonished first that it can be even remotely considered controversial. But women are simply strong in other ways. And I think in any kind of truly fine literature, a woman's strength is always there. It just is, and it's totally unrelated to the masculine style of strength. We don't see ourselves the same way. You can step outside of sci-fi and take a look back to Jane Austen. You know, Elizabeth Bennet is a wonderfully strong woman. If you look at her against her mother, who's used as a foil of what society thought women were, who's a bloody idiot. You know, Elizabeth makes the men take her on her own terms. Mm-hmm. And they were talking a couple hundred years ago, and there's nothing there that says she's not strong. But she's not trying to duke it out with anybody.
Yeah, I think there's always been more leeway for women to be emotionally strong because emotions are feminine. And again, going back to the historical, traditional sense of it, there seemed to be a lot of... Back then, you didn't have a woman who was being physically strong or taking on roles that would require adventure or explorer or astronaut or any of these things. And I think that I love playing with that because I go to work out in the gym and there are women there who can take the guys without breaking a sweat. They look fabulous. They're very feminine and they're also all muscle.
I shall say maybe,
yeah. So that kind of strength I've always loved playing with in characters because I think it's just as important, but it plays to a different kind of characteristic. But yeah, going back to it's not really a gender thing inherently. It's just how we've perceived it for so long. And so getting to break that up.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the reason that kind of emotional strength was acknowledged earlier is because it's territory that a certain type of man is willing to cede to us because it just, it isn't something that he's interested in. Hashtag not all a certain type of man. But it's, it's girly, it's feminine, and so we're allowed to have it. We're allowed to have our, our little corner, and it's a fun corner. But more recently, we've explored other areas of strength, and of course that threatens a hashtag not all a certain type of man.
Oh, Robin, I enjoy your sardonic way of speaking there. I tend to see things that way.
If I'm cynical, it's because I've lived.
Yeah,
Amen.
It's true. Yeah. See, I tend to kind of, for me, it's a matter of, okay, well, yeah, how do you define strong, and is it gendered, right? And does it have to be, right? I'm one of those people who has never fit well within the, this is what's expected of a feminine person, right? The worst thing you could do was tell me to act ladylike when I was a child. This was a cause for a screaming match, right? Because I'm not, right, traditionally feminine in many ways, right? A lot of the things that are considered to be feminine strengths, I'm not very good at, right? I'm much better at a lot of the things that have been traditionally masculine areas, right? I tend to be aggressive. I tend to be adventurous. I take risks, right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with, feminine strength as we've understood it. As a matter of fact, I admire it immensely, and I enjoy reading characters who do that because it's something that I'm not very good at. But because I haven't fit well, right, I've often had the question of, well, okay, well, what is masculine and feminine behavior, right?
I think, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead. No,
I think what you're talking, there's an overlap and a distinction between characteristics and personality, which is part of what you're describing, and strength. Strength often comes out of personality conflicts and situational conflicts. Because strength, I mentioned the gym element before. You have to work those muscles. Any kind of strength, you have to work against pushback. So I think a lot of times what we talk about with strength and characters arises out of the situations we put them in. So they've never really not been strong female characters. Anytime that they're put in, the difference is that I think a lot of times now they're taking the stage more often, and they're developing their strength differently than guys did. But it's the same kinds of strength. Am I making any sense whatsoever? I don't know. It's been a long day.
If anything, you're making too much sense.
Oh, I'll stop that immediately. Yeah.
What it occurs to me is that, men and women, there's been a shift that I see in literature and in movies away from an internal organic strength for women into moving women more into the masculine definition of strength, which is the kick-ass, I can kick your butt kind of strength. And I don't think
Joss Whedon women's strength, the Joss Whedon model of women.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
No, I don't think that's, again, I agree with you 100%. This is where, who our characters are, how have we built them, what kind of backgrounds have we given them, what situations we put them in. And you give two different characters in the same situation will ideally respond two totally different ways. I'm 5 feet tall. We're not mentioning my weight. There is no way I'm going to get physical with somebody because I know the outcome of that.
You just bite them on the ankles. That's what I do.
Oh, don't. You'll have me telling Pekingese stories in a minute. My Pekingese used to chase German Shepherds down the street because he could nip their ankles. They couldn't see him.
Exactly. It's a different kind of strength.
Yeah, it's a Chihuahua. It's the Chihuahua complex.
I'm 5 feet tall and I study martial arts.
Uh-huh.
So, I don't, not necessarily, but you have to learn how to do it differently, right?
Yes.
That's the thing, right? If we're going to talk about combative sort of feminine characters, I guess that leads into that topic, right? Okay, being 5 feet tall, right? I'm not going to be able to throw a guy around, right? And I'm going to get tired quickly if I put on plate mail armor, which I can do and have done, by the way. I'm quite capable of doing that. I've learned SCA fighting. I can put on armor and I can fight, right? But I get tired more quickly than a guy who's stronger than I am. So I have to conserve my strength. I have to use it at key points. I have to get leverage if I'm going to try to haul a guy around. I have to use his strength against him. I have to be more defensive and think it through a little more in terms of how I would deal with a combative situation, right? So that's something that I don't think is getting, I see a lot of really willowy women who have obviously trained for tone and definition getting into combat roles, right? And then they hit a guy and he flies across the room. Well, okay, Wonder Woman can do that. She has supernatural strength. She's a goddess, right? I won't be able to, and I doubt most women would. Right.
Well, it also depends. I mean, you're talking about putting on armor and all of these things, which has always been the pushback against strong. Well, women can't go into battle because they can't do X, they can't do Y, they can't drag a companion if he's wounded. And yet there have been many instances of women doing exactly that in combat. There are women who can put on, and they're not. I mean, I'm 5'4", I'm strongly built, but I'm not heavily muscled. But the question is, are you putting on armor that was built for you? Because a guy's not going to put on armor that was not built for him, that's too heavy for him. I think we do a disservice to ourselves and to characters unless we're intentionally putting them in a situation that is impossible, which is certainly a valid storytelling trope. But if you're going to create a character that you want to be strong in terms of rising to meet the challenges, of being able to meet the challenges, then you want somebody who is also aware of what they need to do, because that's part of the strength, is figuring out your situation and working with it. I mean, that's a Heinlein heroine right there, is somebody who's smart enough to look around and go, okay, he was writing strong female characters, not as we would see them, but for his time and place, he was writing very strong characters. We look at it now and go, dude, you could have done better. A lot better.
I agree with you. I don't think Heinlein gets enough credit for that, actually. His characters were, you cannot say that they were wallflowers, you can't.
Unlike Niven and Pornell. I said, unlike Niven and Pornell, who wrote aliens a whole lot better than they wrote women characters.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you can write bad characters who are strong, and you can write good characters who are strong. They just, I never really recognized any of their characters as what I would see in myself or my sisters. But again, strength is a matter of competence. I mean, there's a phrase that I love: competence porn.
Competence porn. Okay, yeah.
Which gets used a lot if you've ever watched the show Leverage.
Okay.
Competence porn means somebody really good at doing something that they're really good at, and that entire show is about that. But there were women on that show who, I mean, one was traditionally very feminine, a little vampy, definitely used her sex appeal. The other one, she did not at all and was very much not a feminine character in a lot of ways. But they were both incredibly strong, and they were both women. And it all came back down to competence, which I think is one of the most important strengths. And I think, did Fran blip in and out? I think I saw her briefly.
She's phasing in and out of our reality.
Yes. Yeah. There was a message saying that Fran's network is having problems at the moment. So I did see her pop up there for a minute, and hopefully she will return. But yeah.
Can I segue off into a related topic for a moment? I don't know how many of us do editing work, but as an editor in looking at women's stories, it plays into exactly the way you've been describing strength. What I find a lot is there are classic patterns in writing for women and for men. And we look at where people are going, where a writer is really in need of help in developing a character, developing a story. Women that I have worked with start out, they want everybody to be nice. Everyone is, and I can think of some of the issues I don't think I'm allowed to describe, but even rapists are considerate. And I'm thinking, no, that's not the way it works, Charlotte. But they want everybody to be nice. And so everyone, just with absolutely no motive, no anything, will pitch in and help out the heroine and ensure that she is able to achieve her goal without necessarily being nasty to someone. And I see it's not just one person. This is a real clear pattern that I encounter in dealing with aspiring writers and new writers. I was wondering, and men, of course, goes the opposite. Men don't want anything to do with emotion. They don't want emotion on the page. It's all going to be, yeah, you know, Rambo strikes again, or at the very least, you've got a series of events with no emotional content. So there's really clear differences in the kinds of problems I see in aspiring writers. Do you guys, and do you ladies also see that? I don't know if you work with it or if you've encountered it, but that's been a long-term experience for me as an editor. And I see, what's your take on that? Because if we're talking about strong women.
Well, I think that's how we're socialized, isn't it? Right? You know,
Pardon?
I mean, we're all aware that culture socializes women to be nice and men to try not to admit that they have emotions, right? This is part of the culture of toxic masculinity that, you know, we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, right? So perhaps when writers are first venturing into creating their own reality, I mean, writing's very personal, right? When you put your words in the page, right? It's you're kind of bleeding onto it, right? Mm-hmm. At least if it's any good. So it's hard to want to put stuff out there, I guess, for us where people might not approve of the way we're thinking, right? And think, oh, we think like our characters, and you know, yeah, it's unfortunate because it's that's not how the world works, and that's how you're not going to make a good story that way, right? But I think it has to do with that whole. I mean, and not to say that you can't have a nice character that's strong too. That's yeah. Okay. That's perfectly fine. I'm it's kind of a defining character trait of a character I'm writing right now, right? She's too nice and she, you know, too soft-hearted in some areas, right? Where perhaps she shouldn't be, right? But, yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah. Too often, I think what we get editorially, I see, is somebody who, in trying to write a strong female character, goes too far overboard. Obviously,
yeah,
and they're so strong that that's all they are. And on the other side, if they're trying to write a character, a male character, who is not overwhelming the scene in their strongness, what you get is what we used to, when I was growing up, at least, was called a snag, a sensitive new age guy,
right?
Which is a lovely character and it's a great trope to play with, but they do it so much that there's no nuance to either side. And usually I can tell that the writer is not entirely comfortable yet with who these characters are, and they're trying so hard to show the other side that they're not thinking in terms of the character, they're thinking in terms of, how do I make this character strong? And how do I make this character sensitive? And how do I make this character not buy into a gender trope? And really, it comes back to stop thinking about trying to make a strong character. Let your character be strong.
Yeah. I see what you're saying there. I agree with you. Right? Get to know your character. Let the character's own strengths shine through. Don't try to impose your own idea about what that is on the character.
Or somebody else's idea. You know, this is, we started off saying that there's so many different ways to be strong. A lot of times it'd be like, well, this character wasn't very strong because X, and they're missing the point that the character was not strong in X, but they were strong in Y. A strong character, especially a strong female character, is expected to be this Wonder Woman. It's supposed to be this powerhouse who can do everything. And God forbid that they show weakness because they're a strong character. And we mentioned Joss Whedon before, and I will be the first to rag on Joss Whedon a lot. But he did manage to give us a character who was, many female characters who were incredibly strong and also were incredibly weak. And he gave us male characters who did the same thing. So whatever other failings his work has had, he understood that, how to not quite balance it, but to allow them to be both. And that's what I try to remind myself and to remind my clients, that no realistic character is strong end, beginning, and middle. And trying to do that is where I think a lot of us fall down.
Yeah, and I mean that's and that's almost your classic Campbellian character arc, that your character has to be weak to if you buy into that, which to a certain degree I do. Your character has to be weak, at least at certain points, in order to sell people, because if they're just strong at A and B and C and they're running the marathon, sprinting all the way through, where's the tension? Like, why worry about them? Like, they've got this handled. Even in like Sorkin-esque kind of competence porn, they fall down at some point. There has to be that moment of weakness, that valley.
And not even just that moment. I think it needs to be constant, because a well-rounded character, a realistic character, isn't going to always be winning the race. To go back to use that, yeah.
It's interesting that I haven't seen that pattern so much among women writers as I have among the guys. The guys, there's no weakness, there's no conflict. There's, your protagonist is A, male, and B, invincible. So I often think, they're just getting out all the daydreams that they had when they were 16, 17 years old. And somebody, it sounds like he wants to go out over there.
Yeah, you do see that in a lot of, even in professional, even in published writers, in a lot of, hashtag not all men. But there's definitely a certain type of male writer who is obviously just sticking it to all the people who thought he was a pussy in high school.
Yep.
Oh,
I don't necessarily think he's grown up a lot since.
I don't know whether it's I'm getting the other clients or I'm doing the other reading or what, but what I'm actually seeing more often is somebody who is trying really hard but has not thought it through. Like, they'll have a female character, but it will read like a guy, because they're trying to they're importing the strong characteristics directly from a male character and not figuring how that would fit into the female growth perspective, if you will.
And not just that perspective, but the consequences too.
Yes.
If I want to rag on another writer who I absolutely love, as seems to be my theme today, like David Weber in the Honor Harrington series, Honor is written as this kind of wildcat, plays by her own rules. And the fact that there aren't consequences to that really shows through because of the fact that she's female. I think if Honor Harrington were male, you would just be like, yeah, she's a officer on the edge. But because she's female, she gets away with this stuff, and you're like, wait, no, that would never happen. Like, a woman could never, violate these orders or whatnot and get away with it. She would be so screwed.
I love the Honor Harrington books too. I'm a fan, right? It's absolutely one of my favorite series. So, but you're right? Honor Harrington gets a lot of criticism about that, right? And I thought it was Weber, whatever, David Weber's writing. He gets a lot of criticism for that, right? She gets called a Mary Sue. Now, that's one of my favorite bugaboos, Mary Sue. Because we accept this competence in male characters, right? We don't think anything of it. It's perfectly fine. Indiana Jones is perfectly fine, right? Luke Skywalker is perfectly fine, right? What's the difference between Luke Skywalker and Rey? Nothing, just gender. Even their background's the same.
Oh, no, I have to disagree. Luke whined a lot more.
Okay, well, there you are.
Yeah, he was such a catcher.
Yeah, but this idea of she's a Mary Sue. Okay, so my first question is, do you think that male characters get judged differently? Obviously, I do, right? But you can disagree with me. That's cool, right? And the second question is, what happens when there is weakness, but it may not be recognized? Right? That's something that.
So first off, stop trying to make me disagree with you. I'll agree with you if I want to.
friends. I can tell.
I think that male characters, to a certain extent, I think it's not so much leeway as it's just this passive acceptance of, okay, this is the way the world is, and they get to be macho, and the John Wayne philosophy, I guess. And women, I mean, if you have to set the world up, a world up where there aren't, for the Hannah Arrington example, the world has to be set up in such a way that gender doesn't matter for us to accept that she can get away with this the same as her male companions. If the world has not been set up like that, we bring this world into it. And yeah, it's like, no, a woman would not be able to get away with that because there would be much more pushback. I don't know that if the world building is done properly in a story, if male and female characters get treated differently, but that world building has to be done. We have to believe that this is a world in which this character can do these things without being savaged for their gender.
And I got to give a shout out here to Becky Chambers, who handles that wonderfully in Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and its sequel, which also has a long name that I'm blanking on right now. She sells it, she has characters who kind of push that edge, but she's just so great at the world building that she manages to sell it. Yeah.
Well, you're moving into fantasy and away from sci-fi of Terry Pratchett. I just finished reading Witches Abroad, and I don't think we'll ever run across a stronger female character than Mistress Weatherwax, Granny Weatherwax.
I want to be her when I grow up.
Everybody wants to be Granny when we grow up. Yeah.
And yet, in Witches Abroad, he really, allows this character to reflect on the limits that she has to impose on her own power. Mm-hmm. And so here's a woman, Granny is totally not embarrassed by what she can do. The whole essence of her strength is knowing who she is, knowing who and what she is, and knowing that she needs to limit her powers because of the consequences that she would bring about. And I think that's one of the best examples of a man really getting it from a woman's perspective and treating it with absolute, utter respect that this is, you can't not buy into Granny Weatherwax. You might be a little bit afraid of her. You wouldn't necessarily, but you cannot not believe Granny Weatherwax.
Well, there's also an element to that in that Granny Weatherwax, it's an older woman, and you compare it to his portrayal of Tiffany. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, he really understood women on the age spectrum, but there's also a difference in how that strength is portrayed. I mean, the maiden, the mother, and the crone. They're tropes, but they're useful tropes because you are. I had a tweet go semi-viral recently where I was talking about the fact that I think half the reason why this whole young women are the sexy ones comes about is because young women are the ones who haven't quite figured their crap out yet. And by the time a woman gets to 40, they're like, no. And by the time they hit 50, they're kind of like, yeah, that shit can just go off, And that is not perceived as being sexy to the patriarchy. Whole other round.
That explains so much about my life. I just do not give a crap.
And it's true. But there was a lot of discussion, and in addition to a lot of guys insisting that it's only because of biology. But again, another round. But strength changes as we get older, and I think it changes for guys also. It's just less obvious. There's less of a dramatic change, I think. Guys will sometimes learn to be softer in their strength as they get older rather than having to prove it. Whereas women, as they get older, are able to step forward and say, I can prove it to you. I can prove that I'm strong in whatever arena it is. And I don't know if it's more accepted, but it certainly is a development of the character.
But it's also women, I think, tend to reach that spot of not really caring if you believe it or not anymore. Yeah, where when you're young, but I think I'm going back to the biology idea is that our bodies change, and it's not just our bodies that change. It is our whole genetic makeup is designed to support other. I mean, if women weren't willing to take on the dangers of childbirth, if we had a choice in the matter, the species would cease to exist. Visualizing a man giving birth can be a very satisfying undertaking at times, but not terribly effective for the man. But if you think about it, you watch the changes that we go through in personality. A kid, a little girls prior to puberty, right in there with the boys in every regard, especially in the sciences and the math. But their attitudes start to shift, and I don't think it's just cultural. When we hit puberty at 13, is Dr. Jekyll walks up the stairs, and you get Dr. Hyde in the morning. There's such a radical change in our personalities as we shift to looking toward the other and living for the other, wanting to give to the other, as our bodies shift into childbearing mode. And then you hit menopause, for which I can speak from experience, and you revert to who you originally were, which has puzzled more than one husband on this planet, let me tell you. So, we tend to go to different personalities, different foci in our lives. And I don't think that's cultural. I think that really is biological. I think
it's partially biological, but then you also have to take into consideration the fact that for many women of various generations, we've been able to basically say, okay, biology can go sit on a shelf. We're not interested.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that also has a lot of the pushback, because that's disturbing to some people. That's not the natural order. Women are supposed to be of this certain thing, and there are women going, no, not for me. Whether it's just they don't want to, or body dysphoria, or whatever reason, genetics, they've decided that maternal instincts are not them.
Mm-hmm.
Parenthood is not for them for whatever reason. And so they are able to not, as you say, go into that particular period of their life, or at least constrain it. And that's another different type of strength, to say, okay, I am not going to let biology be me.
Yeah, and you also just can't just draw a hard line between biology and culture, and I speak as a biologist on this. Because, you're thinking, we're thinking in a mind frame here where female biology is the aberrant biology, and that is only because a particular type of biology, the male biology, set the rules for society. If things were different, there might be a bunch of guys sitting around at a Google Hangouts right now talking about how male biology is limiting them,
which it certainly does.
See, I tend to lean more in Robin's direction myself, right? I've thought about this, right? The biology, right? Is biology determinative of behavior in terms of gender differences? I don't necessarily think so, and I don't think there's any way to conclusively prove that it is, because the cultural aspects are so ingrained and go back so long that if we were to try to test this, the only way to do it would be some kind of experiment by which children were abandoned on an island at an extremely young age, and that would be a crime against humanity. And even then, it wouldn't be.
I suggested that for my thesis in college. Like, for some reason, I was like, think of what we could learn, but they wouldn't go.
Yeah. Well, just think of. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just. I mean, like, okay. The thing about that is that isn't even determinative, right? Mm-hmm. That wouldn't even be sufficient, because we talk differently to male and female babies, right? We talk to the female babies more and try to engage them in communication more. Already, we are teaching them gender difference, right? So how the hell are we ever going to know whether it's cultural or whether it's biological?
And it just, I mean, in terms of a cultural bias, just using the main thing, menstruation. I mean, this whole thing of well, women are weak and they, they have cramps and they have mood swings, and so therefore they're not fit. I'm like, I've explained to some guys exactly what is going on during menstruation, and I swear to God they get pale.
Yeah, they do.
And they go, wait a minute, what? And because I'm breaking it, okay, this is happening inside my body, and basically this, and these are the pains, and they're just like, every month? I'm like, yeah, for how long? Decades. And they're like, how do you even function? And we're like, aha. But so, culturally, that is seen as making us weaker.
Yeah, it would be considered hardcore if things were reversed.
Oh, if guys were doing it, they'd be getting opiates every month, just because it hurts. Not because they're weak, but because it hurts.
Right. Yeah.
But then, let me clarify perhaps my point here is that I do not in any way, size, shape, or form mean to imply that I think biology is the hard and fast determining factor, only that it is an underlying aspect of what constitutes how men and women react to strength, define strength, and interact with each other. A contributing factor, not a single sole and determining factor.
Okay, that's fair, right? And like I said, I don't think we can disentangle it. You might be right. I will point out that
You control Earth to figure this out.
I know, right? But okay, I'll also point out that boys, the same Jekyll and Hyde thing happens to them. It just happens 3 years later. I raised 3 of them. I know.
Yeah, testosterone fairy arrives. Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, right. So and they're just as full of tears and freaking out as any one of my daughters was. So it's just that we encourage different expressions of that too, right?
They're as much driven by their genitalia and their innards and whatnot. It's just that the jokes are different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
Reminded one of my grandmother's sayings, which I'm not sure I'm supposed to repeat on here, but
go for it.
It's definitely not politically correct. But if God wanted men to think, she would have put his brains between their ears.
I think I've heard that version in Yiddish before.
Okay.
I don't know. She was not offended.
But the truth is, we are, hormones are a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The hormones hit, and both of us, especially in the early stage, this is one of the reasons why teenagers are insane, right? Yeah. Because they literally are insane, because they've got so much of this stuff.
Well, their bodies are growing, their bodies inside are changing. We really should just, put them all in nice, soft, padded rooms for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Give them something to do, something to learn, and then let them out when they can deal with stuff. This also would be a great thesis, and I don't think they would let anybody do it.
No.
Not anymore, no.
Institutional review boards are so narrow-minded, I swear.
Academia,
I love the fact that we naturally fell into one of these areas, right? It's interesting because this subject, there are a lot of very diametrically opposed points of view. Right. And they're not all held by one gender or the other either. I want to point out, right. It's not just men who are saying,
oh, no.
Men and women react differently and they have different strengths. And, we should play to feminine strengths, and rather than trying to, quote, act like men, right. Which, I kind of always do, I guess. But they say that, we should give more respect to the feminine strengths and
take pride in that. Yeah.
There's a good argument for that, right? There's a good argument for that, even if we don't consider it to be gender-based behavior, right? These are things that society needs, right? And, we need people to be nurturing. I'm not that good at that stuff, right? Motherhood came hard to me. I had to work on it. It was a real challenge because I am not naturally just good at that.
If only you had a strong emotional male role model to pattern yourself on.
Yeah.
But you have a really good point. And I think it comes back to, if we're going to create a strong female character, dragging this back on topic by its ears.
Yeah. How dare you?
I know.
Topic at all. It's all relevant, but go ahead. Yeah.
But if you're going to do that, you need to emphasize both strong and female differently, equally but differently, in that the character is female and the character is strong. not the character is strong because she's female, or the character is strong despite being female.
Yes,
Right.
It's like making chocolate chip cookies.
Mhm.
You know, you got to have all the ingredients, otherwise you just have a mess and it doesn't taste as good. I'm hungry now.
Yeah. It's allowing each character to become who that character is, letting that character develop for themselves. And that, you know, is, as you point out, that is finding his or her own strength, his or her own form of strength. You know, it's partly looking at the bodies that you're giving your character. You know, someone who is not athletically inclined is not likely to try to take a kick-ass approach, male or female, to solving a problem. That person is going to look at survival instinct and say, let's talk. And that's part of it, is who is the character? How do you develop the character? And you have to respect that character, or allow that character to become who he or she is, and not try to say, oh, well, I need them to have this or to have that, because that's going to illustrate the intellectual point I want to make. And that just totally is going to blow your character out of the water.
I think it was, I saw an interview with George R.R. Martin, right? And someone said to him, well, how do you write such, you know, believable female characters as a male writer? And he said, well, I assume they're human.
Good point.
What a weird concept.
Ladies, I owe you all apologies, but I'm getting a hot hit, such that we are on multiple deadlines outside of writing here, and I'm getting a rather pointed.
Are you getting the wrap it up sign?
Yeah, no, it was the wrap it up sign. It was like 10 minutes ago. This is the you want to live tonight.
I'm getting the same thing from my cat, saying, excuse me, woman, it's past feeding time. Yes. Speaking of having, you know, no maternal instinct, apparently.
Fair enough. Does anybody have any parting thoughts then before we wrap this up for the evening?
This is just immensely enjoyable. That I am thrilled and honored to have had the chance to chat with you guys. This has really been delightful.
I'm just hoping somebody does and can write it all up and then tell me what we just said, because I was not taking notes. I was talking too fast to take notes, but there's just so much going on about the ingredients that make that, that strong female character. To mangle the metaphor a little bit, everybody's got their own family recipe.
And we have to get ourselves on a panel at a sci-fi convention and have the most controversial topic. Common sense.
The archive of this will remain for anybody to watch at any time, and I find myself doing that too. Usually, I'll gladly what did I just say? I hope I didn't follow the video. Did I actually sound okay? You know, so.
I feel like the video is going to be used as evidence against me at some point.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, ladies, I hug you all from a distance. I thank you for the chance to get to know you and chat with you, and I'm going to go practice some survival instincts on my own here.
Check out Bonnie's
talking
book.
to you.
She's an awesome writer.
Yeah,
Bye.
Take care, ladies. Now, if
Thank
I
you.
can figure out how to shut down here, I'm not even sure how to shut. How do I
Oh,
drop
see,
it?
now it's just awkward. You just,
There'll be a little red phone sign. Just click on it.
Yeah, it's up top
Thank
there.
See,
Yeah.
women, yes. Take care.
Bye.
Do you ladies have anything coming up that you'd like to point our audience at before we say goodbye? As it were?
No, go ahead.
I was just saying just had the story collection for West Wind's Fool come out. Ebook and the print edition will be coming out soon. On topic, the main character of West Wind's Fool is a woman who is basically trying to find her strength in a world that really doesn't want her to have it. So relevant. There we go. And that's set in my Devil's West world. Awesome.
Devil's West. I haven't read your Devil's West stuff. Oh, never mind. I'll talk to you about it later.
No, talk about Devil's West.
No, you got to do your pitch next. I got to get going to feed the cats.
Okay. All right. So I'll do it because your cats might eat you otherwise. I have a short story in the Sirens Benefit anthology Rebels and Revenants called The Queen Mum, and that is an anthology written entirely by the women of Sirens, women and non-binary people of Sirens. Hello, kitty! And it's an awesome little collection of short stories. It's available in ebook and paperback on Amazon and other online retailers, and you should check it out. All the profits go to benefit the Sirens Conference, which is an awesome freaking conference.
I keep meaning to go, and it's always at such a bad time of year for me.
Yeah, it's at the same time as some other big conference. I forget which one, but you know, I went once, and that is my conference for that weekend now. Once you go, you're hooked.
That's awesome. I like the name already. I'm interested.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it great? Yeah. I didn't come up with it. Somebody else came up with that. We're all like, yes, that's it.
Yeah, I kickstarted my collection of weird Western stories called Once Upon a Time in the Weird West. It is now available. And a story of mine was recently in Third Flatiron's Terra Tara Terror, which just came out like a couple of weeks ago. And I'm working on editing an anthology called Gunsmoke and Dragonfire, which is all fantasy Western stories. So that'll be coming out in January is the plan. So the Kickstarter will probably be middle of November. I guess I better get my crap together, huh?
And what kind of stuff can we get for do you have your levels, your reward levels?
Oh, you know what? Okay, like I've got to talk to the other authors yet. But what I'd like to do, what I did is for the Weird West stories, right, that I think I'm going to imitate. Okay, so there were audio files of the stories. There were ebooks, and you got more of them, right? The more level that you went up. At some point, you get the book, right? At some point, you get the hardcover book, right? There was also exclusive live streams. I've got some filk music I might be able to throw in there.
Cool.
I now have another cat actually chewing at my ankle, so I gotta get going.
So yeah, we should go. Yes.
All right. Thanks so much. Talk to you guys later.
This was a lot of fun. And we'll see you again on Spec Chat.
Awesome. Take care.